1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
November 13th, 2014. I came late to junior varsity basketball practice for the first time before the season had even started. All of my classmates were playing varsity, but I was just happy to make the JV team because I was 336 pounds. That's not some sort of error in conversion from the metric system, by the way. I was literally 336 pounds and I felt every pound of them. That day, Coach Slappy looked at me when I entered the gym, and without giving me the chance to explain my tardiness, he put his index finger up and circled it in the air, directing me to run laps around the basketball court. And I was okay with that punishment, given my tardiness. But what came after was nothing short of torture. As I ran, I kept yelling, "How many laps, coach?" And all he did was continue the finger circling over and over. I swear I could have run 100 laps that day, had I known it from the start. But the psychological punishment and the fear of the unknown was just unbearable. That day, I ran 29 laps, and every lap felt like the last one. By the time Coach Slappy remembered to tell me to stop, I was mentally and physically drained. I remember this story as I finished 290 days of hunger strike with my 27th birthday approaching. The second birthday I would be spending in prison. It is 10 years later that day. I'm 150 pounds lighter, languishing in a solitary underground dungeon, reflecting on that basketball season and its relevance to my current situation. I have lost my sense of hunger. I lose consciousness often. I wake up to bruises and a bloody mouth almost daily, and the physical pain has become the norm. My body has become numb as it eats away at itself. But none of that is as painful as the ambiguity of indefinite arbitrary detention. Mental and physical depletion piled upon degradation. I don't know how long until this punishment ends, so every day passes like it's the last, slow and excruciating. After those 29 laps, I stopped smoking shisha, I lost 60 pounds, I practiced my ass off and moved up from benching the JV team to sixth man to a starter. By the end of that year, I was on the varsity basketball team with my classmates. I realized that Coach Slappy was testing my mental fortitude, my potential, and whether I had enough heart for the game. I can't help the tears flowing down my bony cheeks as I thought of my weakness and inability to fully trust God's wisdom as I did with Coach Slappy. Of course, there was no comparison. The imprisonment test is a much more extreme and definitely more painful one. But just like the former made me stronger, and if I survived this, would also make me stronger. Just like I was prepped to be a better basketball player, I was being molded to be a wiser human, an effective leader, and a stronger advocate of freedom and justice. My coach's words, "Hate every moment of training but love and cherish every second of victory," are ever so relevant. A ray of optimism lit my heart. That's the thing about birthdays, anniversaries, New Year's, and graduations. They inspire reflections of the past, thoughts and emotions around purpose, priorities, plans, future, and hope. I wiped my tears, and just as I began to prepare for night prayer to thank God for his blessings, I smiled as I remembered what I told myself 10 years ago during the 29th lap: this has an end. Torah Prison, Tagruba Ward. I decided to begin by sharing this journal entry from the dungeons of Egypt in honor of Coach Slappy, who died alongside his dad last year after contracting COVID. Rest in peace, Coach. If someone had told me that I'd go from an Ohio State University class to Tahrir Square, to getting shot and arrested, to languishing in an Egyptian dungeon where a hunger strike would nearly kill me a dozen times, to the Oval Office standing face to face with the person responsible for my freedom, President Obama, to being nominated and selected to give this speech on behalf of some of the most brilliant and diverse group of people in the world's top-ranked program, I tell them they needed to stop smoking. But here I am, nearly 7 years removed from all of that, genuinely honored and humbled to be with family, friends, mentors, teachers, and distinguished guests. I can easily say that I would not be here today if it weren't for the love, support, and guidance I received from you. So thank you. During orientation, Professor Bibin Sadaka told us that we were going to be learning from some of the best practitioners in the world. Fortunately, that checked out. We were also told that the times we were living in were historically unprecedented and pivotal. And unfortunately, that also checked out. The better part of the last 2 years, it felt like our country was on the brink of war with itself every 100th tweet or third day, depending on which metric system you kept count. We saw our national cohesion and unity get tested and fractured. We saw the fabric of our society and communities get torn by politics. We partook in Black Lives Matter protests to stand in solidarity with our Black sisters and brothers against police brutality and systemic racism that still plagues our country. We witnessed a global leadership failure as inept leaders allowed the virus to run rampant and turn common sense safeguards into totems of cultural wars. The world we knew coming into the MSFS program is an entirely different world than we are living in today. Since the pandemic, the way we eat, drink, socialize, date, learn, work, exercise, meditate, pray, collaborate, and compete changed forever. The wheels of our economy almost stopped churning. We saw our family and friends lose jobs or stress about job security. We lost parents, uncles, aunts, coaches, friends. We went to sleep every day not knowing who we could lose tomorrow or next week. We walked around with the anxiety over the potential illness or death we could possibly cause if we're not cautious enough. These last few years have been some of the toughest years to have been going through a rigorous program like ours, without being able to give each other the full support that comes from in-person contact and shared experience. The worst bit, just like the uncertainty of the 29th lap or the indefinite arbitrary detention, not knowing when the end would come was absolutely the worst. But we survived and got through it together. And throughout it, the best of us quickly surfaced. We saw how we as a class came together to protest injustice side by side. We then advocated to incorporate diversity, equality, and inclusion into MSFS's core values to reflect who we are as a community. Ishani and Amanda then worked tirelessly to see it actioned throughout the year. We saw how Elizabeth put herself at risk to document protests all summer, how Menti cared for her ill parents during the pandemic, while co-chairing the MENA Forum, excelling in her academics, keeping up with all of the class gossip, and putting a smile on all of our faces. How Duncan organized Zoom group workouts at the beginning of the pandemic. But P90X at 7 a.m.? Why though? How Ruben, Elena, Steve, Devin, Kevin reminisced about the short-lived intramural basketball league. How our student reps, Christina, Mary, Tyler, Amanda, Andrew, Wilson, dedicated their time and energy to advocate on our behalf. How the program leadership, especially Professor Nicole Bibin Sadaka, Professor Hellman, Miller, and Shanta, who checked in on us to make sure we were okay, pushing us through with motivation and support. How Amanda and Elena started yoga classes, and Nicole started Sunday Bible study to bring people together for spiritual growth. How Martina organized groups for studying, video collages. We all love those. How too many to name managed to achieve academic excellence and become PMF finalists, Albright TAs, and passing orals with distinctions. How we came together during birthdays, deaths in the family, and celebrated one another in the limited ways we were able. The bonds forged during these extraordinary times will not just endure, but will continue to grow. It is through that kind of experience that the professional relationships we aspire to build coming into a program like MSFS have evolved into deep personal connections that will be sustained for a very long time. And consider the adversity of the recent times we encounter. Often we felt that our limits have been tested, that things had been so bad, we didn't know if they'd ever get better again. Our capacity was tested, our strength persevered, and in this reinforced resilience and expanded capacity we developed. And I truly believe that we are not only prepared for the increasingly volatile world we are entering, but we are determined to make it better than we found it left to us. And make no mistake that the world we are on the doorsteps of is facing unprecedented challenges: environmental degradation, global pandemics, economic marginalization, social unrest, and democratic backsliding. And that the world needs empathetic leaders who are responsive to people's needs and strive to understand their dreams and aspirations. Compassionate leaders who inspire hope, empower others, and galvanize coalitions to do more, better. Principled leaders whose pursuit of meaningful change is defined by resilience and passion. And our cohort embodies the leadership skills necessary to navigate through these tumultuous times. We are brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, mothers and fathers. We are civil servants, diplomats, economists, NGO workers, humanitarians, military service people, and policy and intelligence analysts. We're from the United States, Japan, China, South Korea, Yemen, Iran, Qatar, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ukraine, France, and Colombia. Soon, every memo we write, every briefing we give, and every meeting we attend will have an impact on many lives. That isn't meant to add pressure. It's meant to remind us that every day we will have a renewed opportunity and privilege of impacting people's lives for the better. Before recovering our official titles, we are going out today into the world as ambassadors of justice and equality, at home and abroad. And in so doing, we keep the struggles of those less privileged than us, living under authoritarianism, poverty, and oppression in the forefront of our minds and hearts. And if I can impart a few things today, small, simple requests to carry with you, it's this. Don't let the institutions and bureaucracies you will work in wear down your aspirations or temper your ambitions. Don't get jaded as you jolt into the real world. Don't let pragmatism and convention confine your pursuit for change. Resist the urge to be complacent, to be the exception to the rule, and don't brush away an injustice in the name of playing it safe. It often takes moral courage to stand up for what is right, especially when it's inconvenient. And knowing courage isn't always rewarded in the short term, know that the path that it paves and the ripple effect that it creates often outlives the person and the problem they sought to change. And if for a second you are up against a challenge that you think is bigger than yourself, where you feel too small to make a difference, remember this: you cannot quantify good and evil with the same metric, because it only takes a single match to illuminate darkness. And as the Arab poetry verse reads, certainly a fly can pierce the eye of a lion. إن البعوضة تدمي مقلة الأسد. Lastly, to the person who taught me that courage, pride, and perseverance in pursuit of justice is the highest calling. To Baba, who can't be with me today to celebrate because he's still languishing somewhere in an Egyptian dungeon. Thank you. Thank you for the most important lesson of all. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I am sure we will soon meet again. Now let's go out there and change the world.